What do you think of that, Mr. Pajama-wearing, basket-faced, slipper-wielding, Clyde-Street-buckled, gather-up and blade maw-bleathering gomerel, Jesse-off-looking stoner, near-flukish-on milk-drinking, soy-faced, show-pit, min-moved, sniveling worm-eyed hootin' block, vile stooging calibrate tatty.
Hello, and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today we're talking about the show with the coolest theme song. Like, hands down, no question. Yeah. Samurai Jack has the best theme song probably ever. Like, it's completely, because it's completely original and it's one of the catchiest intros I've ever had. So we're going to do a deep dive today into Samurai Jack because, it may seem weird, but this is called the Warp Shelf. We go through everything on our shelf here.
Yeah, and it's significant for you because it was a big, sort of reintroduction, catch-up. And you had never seen, the final Adult Swim season. So.
Exactly. I watched as a kid because my brother's name is Jack, so we watched because we were like, it's your name, cool, let's watch, but I definitely didn't watch it all the time, and I definitely didn't see everything. Mm-hmm. And then you were like, here's the Blu-ray, here you go, finish the thing. Yep. And I've been storming through it, and I gotta say, it's definitely one of the best animated shows maybe ever.
Definitely ever.
It is just, it's fantastic. For a kid's show, it's exemplary for its art alone. Because a lot of kids shows can have great art, but to also push the formatting and the way you use the frame in an animated show, Samurai Jack pushes that, and there's a reason why this is an Emmy Award winning show. This show is just at points jaw-dropping,
it's such a simple but flexible premise. Just taking the wandering samurai, which is definitely a thing, and just executing it to the nth degree because you decided to add the weird, wild card sci-fi aspect of sending him into the future.
Which has always been the fun draw of Samurai Jack, is it's the classic samurai tale, but with the fun of the future, Hanna-Barbera type universe going on. But I think it has to be handed, all the credit for this show being as masterful as it is has to be handed to its director,
Genndy Tartakovsky.
Thank you.
I would just refer to him as Genndy from here on
Genndy.
out.
I'm just gonna call him Genndy. Genndy is just flexing on him the entire show, guys.
Yeah, this was an attempt for him to make a more serious show for him, an action-centered show after he had such success with Dexter's Lab and other shows
which I
of
love.
Its time. Yeah, I love Dexter's Lab.
Love Dexter's Lab.
But this was I'm successful. Maybe I could do something a little different.
Yeah. And the show's famous, and whenever you think of Samurai Jack, you think of quiet episodes. Mm-hmm. The show's famous for not only minimal art, but also minimal usage of dialogue and story exposition. It is all visual, and that's why I say flexing on them, because no other show was doing that. No show does that, just stay silent for not just one episode, but for most of its episodes is just quiet and it's all action, and it's just astounding at points.
The first episode with the entire montage.
You're talking the movie?
Yeah. Or the first part
of
the
movie,
first
part.
It's the first three episodes.
Yep.
Just the entire montage of setting up the premise. Aku was trapped long ago. He's escaped. You have to fetch the sword. But before that, we have to train Jack to be a warrior.
Yep.
And just that whole montage of him traveling to different countries and experiencing different cultures, and him training to be the ultimate warrior with there's no dialogue
at all
for minutes on end. Just the idea that it doesn't feel the need that, even though this is aimed at a younger audience, not to speak down to them.
Yeah, it just shows it to them, and you know what? Not only is that is it a badass story, it's a badass way to tell the story. It is just, I loved that so much about so many of my favorite episodes in this show are almost completely silent, you know, like, which it's funny because we'll talk about this show at some point, but BoJack Horseman, one of my favorite episodes, is it's completely silent underwater.
Oh, the one underwater, I love that episode.
Love that episode. But it's funny because that's such like them being like, oh man, this was really hard, you know, like, and Samurai Jack was like, he's another one, another one, you know, like they just keep throwing it at him. There's so many great things to talk about with this show. First off, I think you have to give it to not only Phil LaMarr, but the entire voice cast of that entire show. It is not only extremely well cast, it's well acted, and star-studded. Often I was like, oh shit, is that Bill? You know, like, is that Billy West? Oh man,
Yeah.
is that Tom Kenny? Like, oh man,
Billy West, Tom Kenny,
basically like
Jeff Bennett.
All of a sudden, you're like, is that SpongeBob? Is that, you know, like, is that Jake the dog? You know, like, it's constant, and that's why I loved the show as you know, as a grown up watching it, because I know who these guys are, and I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe they had these people come in for this show. You know, like, it's wild.
It's absolutely right. Despite being a show aimed at children, it is sort of ageless and timeless in that respect, because you can definitely appreciate it a lot more as an adult.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, wow, the subtlety and nuance in this, what could have been in just
An
action villain of the week type thing. That's still
I would
fun
say
for what it is.
a similar show and a similar time would be the Shaolin Monk show. Where
Shaolin Showdown.
Shaolin Showdown.
Yeah.
I was going to say it was Shaolin Showdown, but I didn't know if that was the actual title. I love that show, but that show is always like, here's the plot. Here's what we're doing today. Okay, let's fight him, beat him up. You know, like, and Samurai Jack will just throw you into a situation sometimes, you know, like, and you'll be like, whoa, what's Jack up to? You know, like, oh man. Or, you know, it'll start off with him just like walking about, you know, like,
yeah, and it's not afraid to just explore all these different facets and different genres or any type of story it tends to want to tell, which is the advantage of doing an anthology story. This is what you should do.
Exactly. I think the genre bending, I was going to say gender bending, genre bending that goes on is fantastic, because the premise alone is genre bending. You have a samurai in the future with all the futuristic stuff, but then you have Western episodes, you have action adventures, you have full fantasies, you have horror. Indiana Jones horror, the horror episode,
the haunted house.
Oh my god, I was like shitting my pants because I was like, where did this all come from? Like, you're just like, holy smokes. It's just fantastic.
As a show, it's more or less like Genndy's a culmination of like everything Genndy loved growing up.
Yeah.
Because he's just a fan of storytelling in general. And you can kind of see that because he's not averse to like putting in like little winks to stuff.
Exactly.
From like Usagi Yojimbo.
Yeah, they
to,
do
like,
Wolf and Cub.
Wolf and Cub.
They basically do Wolf and Cub.
It's like there's the
Power Rangers
there's
episodes.
the heist episode where the character literally looks like he stepped out of Lupin the Third.
Yeah, right. It's so funny. I love that. They just like. I think some of my favorite stuff is when they give Jack a different outfit, because it just cracks me the fuck up because he's just so constant. I think that's another genius of the idea, is that like, he stands out so much. Jack, like, you know, like everybody else is futuristic robots or something else, and he's just like very clean white, you know, like in his gi, just like looking at people like.
Yeah, it's a very simple but effective design.
Yeah.
And that tends to be, even though designs can be more intricate as far as like the other characters are concerned, they still follow that mentality of like simple and effective and great stylistically.
Because you could say that for Aku. Aku is one of the best designed villains in a kid's show, because first off, he's scary. First off, like, Aku, as silly as he is, when you get to the Birth of Evil episode, you're just like, oh shit, like, what? Like, he does what to the lands? You know, like, it's that's the great part about Aku. It's this great balance of like silly, like all powerful villain and like an actual all powerful villain,
but
you know?
still like a force of nature.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that's, and the simplicity of just like his is it a kabuki mask he's basically kabuki mask?
I think so.
That he's based off of. I just love that because it first off is another signal to the culture. It's like, hey, like here's another Japanese
but
culture
just like
thing.
that simple sort of inherent iconography of just like grimace.
Demon, of demon, and he's like the demon, you know, like aku literally means deep, you know.
Yeah.
It's just like it's so good, and that's what I think another great thing about this show, and I don't know if it gets said enough, is how great it was at introducing some culture to American audiences who were sitting through like. But this show was lined up right next to SpongeBob, you know, was lined up right next to so many shows that were so American, and they only introduced nothing to kids. Yeah. And then they're like, that's not a dress, that's a gi, you know, in the middle of a Samurai Jack episode, you know, and you're kind of like, huh? Like, was that culture I had? Like, and that's exactly
the thing is, it doesn't even have just a total Asiatic influence either.
No.
Like, this tackles other cultures as well.
Which is why I loved it, is it's so universal. Like, you know, like they, even from the very beginning, they're like, we're going to go to all these different cultures in that first episode. Yeah. They're like, here we go. And then they keep that up. They don't, like, it's not some false, like, ally shit where it's like, hey, we introduce these characters but we never come back. It's like they bring them.
It's not like the easy Paragon thing of just like, oh, I trained with all these different cultures to make me the ultimate badass, but then it's never addressed again. We just needed that as a tool to say this is how cool he is.
They constantly reference how all the different trainings he's got, and I love that about that. Like, they have whole episodes where they're like, oh yes, this is a part of his training. This is how we're going to show it, you know, like, and it's so good.
And then there's so many like differing yet unconflicting art styles that accompanies those different cultures too, and yet it all seems to blend so well.
Which is just more genius to Genndy is that he's able to blend all these things and make it work. Because even with just the Hanna-Barbera characters he slips in, those are none of them are the same art style specifically, and he somehow works them in and they look the same as his art style, but you're still like, oh, there they are.
That's the thing that's like prevalent in all his shows. He loves throwing in just like a little Hanna-Barbera cameo whenever he can sneak it in. I can remember shots of like Fred Flintstone in Dexter's Lab. I remember the like shaggy looking Jedi in the 2D Clone Wars he did. There's also like the Popeye robot in the final season of Samurai Jack.
Yeah, so funny. You're like, oh, there he is. Like, that episode's so funny. The great thing about Samurai Jack is not only is it a great storytelling device, it's a great art device. Because like you were saying, the art blends well together. But not only that, but he's able to try different styles, different art techniques, and still work it in, you know? Like, and that's just, it blew my mind constantly, you know? Like,
one of those executions where they had broadened it enough and just kept it to its bare bones in a good way, in that they probably just woke up and they had a meeting in the writer's room. It was just like, what type of story do we just want to tell today?
Yeah, right.
It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter what the genre is. We'll just tell that story.
Exactly.
We can do a ghost story. We can do just a straight comedy story. We could do high fantasy. We could do an episode, just a whole episode dedicated to a 300 homage.
Yeah. So we'll go in a second. We'll go into all our favorite episodes. We'll try to go through them all and pick out our favorites, because there is a lot of great favorites.
It was tough to narrow down because the consistency of quality throughout the show is astonishing, especially for a show like this. When it's episodic, you tend to open yourself up for more like hit and miss adventures,
and how solid it is the whole time. Because that's what's crazy is that I kept being like, okay, where is it gonna slow down? Where are we gonna have a bad episode? And I name one bad episode.
There are no bad episodes.
There's no bad episodes. There's episodes where you're like, haha, that's kind of stupid, but then it eventually pulls it off. Like, even if you're talking about, I would say the one episode that always stands out to me as being like, is almost I think it's the second or third episode in the show with the dogs and the Beatles. Like,
that's part of the movie.
Part of the movie. It like, almost doesn't work, and then it still works. Like, you know, like you're like, what is happening here? And then they have the whole end scene with the Beatles, and you're like, oh, that was fucking incredible, you know, like, and you're like, okay, never mind, you know, like,
yeah, it's funny just how well it works. There's a whole episode of just like, what if Jack was a chicken?
Yeah, right. And that's like, the episode where you're like, this is it. This is the bad episode. And then it's so fucking funny and wild that you're just like, okay, all right. Another episode that I was like, okay, this is going to be bad is the sandals episode. And I was like, oh no, like this is going to be weird. And then it turned into definitely one of my favorite episodes of just like Jack fooling around with different shoes and genres. Like, so funny. Before we go into the episodes, though, I think we have to go into a little bit more of his frame changing. I think that's an important part of Samurai Jack is that they changed the aspect ratio
for
in the
dramatic
frame
effects.
for dramatic effect. And of course you'll be like Kill Bill, but the real thing is like Kung Fu movies, you know, like classic Kung Fu movies. They changed the aspect ratio for dramatic effect. And the amount of times I gasped at your use of changing of the aspect ratio is too high.
It's
too high.
It just hit just right. You're like,
you're just, ooh. You're like, ooh, ah. Like, it's just, it works so well. It's definitely, I'll bring it back to Kill Bill. Like, Kill Bill is definitely one of the ones that uses that well, but they use it very restrained. And Samurai Jack does not use it restrained.
No, it's
pretty
definitely
much
not afraid.
Constantly.
Like, it will switch from like really ultra wide, that's like a close up to his eyes.
Yeah.
Then it'll go back to the general 4:3. Sometimes it'll do the very anime thing of just like close up of eyes on one square, the other eyes on this square. Sometimes it'll do like a grid.
One of my favorites is that they just stick with the widescreen in the Spartan episode. I think that's one of these episodes where you're just like, why is it stuck like that? And you're just like, and it's so weird, but it's so like genre defining for that, you know, like you're like, oh, this is an epic story, you know, like, and you're just like, oh, okay. And that's what's great about it is he's able to not only use the frame for dramatic effect, but for mood setting, you know, like what type of story this is going to be, what like,
and it's able to be accomplished so well almost all the time.
Yeah, constantly. Yeah, just like
if there's one thing you can describe with Samurai Jack, especially because it's not afraid to be silent, is just this sense of aesthetic and atmosphere that's just like pungent in every episode.
Pungent. And and that's what's really great about the show is I feel like not only is it introducing kids to a lot of like cultural things, you know, like, and some cool action, it's pungent with mood and genre. Like these are important things for people to catch on to and to know that that's what, you know, that genre is.
And it's never
like,
even like obvious signifiers either, because it hits like the big genres, but it even gets like real specific. Like, I love the samurai versus samurai episode.
Yeah, that's a
samurai.
The
fact that it's like a big wink to The Last Dragon and like blaxploitation stuff. You're just like, this is awesome.
This is crazy.
It's ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous. That episode is insane. You're just like, oh, okay. And then they come back to the character, even makes it more insane in season 5. You're like, what? Why did we go back to this?
He was actually voiced by Keegan-Michael Key in that second
Really?
episode.
That's super funny.
When they brought him back in the Adult Swim season.
That's great. Oh, man.
I didn't catch it when I watched it, and then when I found out, I'm like, oh yeah, of course it's fucking Key.
Okay, so let's go into some favorite episodes. I feel like it's a little bit of the time. So I gotta say off the bat, is it okay to say that season 5 is the best episode in and of itself because it acts like it's one episode constantly?
One big, like, 12.
That's what I gotta say before we go into the episodes is that the show's great at being like episodic. Every episode is different. It covers different things. It wants to tell a different story, and then season 5 comes out for Cartoon Network, and they're like, nah. they're like, nah, we're gonna connect all this. And sure, they still make it episodic, but everything connects, and I just love
There
that.
is something to be said about just the gap of Samurai Jack, where it was just gone.
Yeah, because it's really weird that canceled the show.
It was one of those things where it was sort of unceremoniously canceled, not in the middle of a season or anything, but it was just one of those things where, like, the season had ended, and we were just waiting for more, and then there was just kind of silence, and nothing about it, until they were eventually just like, yeah, we're not coming back.
And it also sounds like he knew that was going to be the last episode of season 4. Like, that was going to be it, because he said that he wanted the last episode. If he couldn't complete the story like he wanted, he would just make it like another story, like another episode. It doesn't matter. Even though this might be the last episode we ever see of Samurai Jack, it's just another episode. Which I like that sentiment, that, like, Jack's story goes on forever, like that's a nice sentiment. And then I love that season 5 is just like, now we gotta deal with that sentiment. Like,
and it played with the idea that it had felt like the show had been gone so long, which it had, because there was like 12 years in between.
Yeah.
And so they actually were like, we're not going to try to ignore that. We're actually going to go straight on time skip.
Yeah, and that's what it's so funny, because I loved watching this show. I knew I would be super hyped for the season 5 because it's a more adult season. That's what everyone
it was
told
on Adult
me.
Swim.
It's Adult Swim. They actually kill people, because that's definitely one of the big staples of Samurai Jack. Is this is a kid's show, so everyone who dies is a robot.
Yeah.
Like we can kill them all we want,
even if they look like aliens. As soon as limbs coming off, they just happen to have like prosthetic limbs.
Just happen to have,
or they're just fully cybernetic on the inside.
And that's I love that, and it is so. It makes it fun, because you're just like, he's not gonna like murder a random person.
Yeah, it even goes back to like the big fight with the Beatles in episode 3.
Yeah,
where it's just like, look at all this ink flying around. He's just covered in ink after killing all of these Beatles.
Right, you're like, oh man. And that's why I think season 5, when they start to deal with him actually killing people, it's so effective, because they actually have to, they like bring up the point that he's never actually killed anybody before. Like, you're some great samurai, but you've never actually killed anybody, like, and oh man, that just made me half erect. I love that shit. You're
but
just
before
like,
we
damn.
even talk about season 5, I would say let's focus on the episodes before the big hiatus.
Of course. We'll talk about before season 5, but had to.
So I would say one of my favorite episodes right off the bat is actually the 3-episode like pilot movie.
I gotta give it to him. I totally was like, oh great, they're starting with a movie. Like, I'm sure this will be kind of too long.
I remember seeing that movie when it first aired.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I remember parts of it. I remember, of course, the dogs and the beetle part.
I remember Cartoon Network like advertising the hell out of it.
Oh yeah.
So when it finally arrived, like, I was just like, this looks really cool. And then I like happened to catch it when they like were first airing it, and I'm like, this is awesome.
And I think that movie is better than most starting animated movies, because there's a lot of shows that start with a movie, and this could have been some wasted time, and they used pretty much every minute of it, like they're just like, nope, this is what we're doing, this is what we're showing, here's the rest of the universe, like here's what he'll be fighting for the rest of this show, like it moves, and like we said before, the whole montage where there's no talking and he's getting trained is just a work of art. Like, it sounds so stupid, but it's one of those things that you're witnessing it and being like, damn.
It's like a journey in and of itself, even though it's just summed up in a montage.
Right? You're just like, wow, holy shit. I absolutely love those first 3 episodes.
So I generally consider it like just one big episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially since it did air, it's just a straight-on movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it usually...
It's not like one of those things like people refer to the world's finest episodes of Superman the Animated Series as the movie, because it was packaged as a movie later. Yeah. Whereas this actually aired as a movie and then was split into episodes after the fact.
True enough. Now, there's some great episodes in the first season. I think you have the first 3 episodes, which are fantastic. But then you have Jack and the Woolies, which was one of those episodes that just shouldn't have made me laugh. Like, it just shouldn't have. Like, it's so stupid, but that exaggerated nerd voice, it made me laugh so much.
The torturers of the Woolies.
Yeah, they're like, hey, listen to me.
Because they're literally all Mandark.
Yeah, they're all Mandark. Oh my god, it cracked me up. I love that shit.
But it was also just like, oh wow. Animal abuse and enslavement.
Animal abuse. You're like, oh shit. And that's and it's kind of a fun animated episode. It looks good, you know, like, and even though it's like cartoony.
And an episode like that has like such a heavy message, just like treat animals right, don't torture animals, for lesser creators could come off as a really ham-fisted.
Yeah. And this comes off more elegant and just kind of like, we told the story, all right, you know, like, it's over. But I would say my absolute, and it's definitely top 10 for me episode wise, and it's in the first season, is episode 7, The Three Archers.
Three Blind Archers.
I
knew you were going to say The Three Blind Archers.
I was so damn hype. Like, I shouldn't have been hype, but that episode is so hype. It's the first episode where they really start introducing the more Jack gets naked, the harder the fight is. You know, like they're like, if Jack's losing clothes, it means it's a hard fight. Like, and they go ham with that, where he
loses
like
his gi, he loses his sandals, he's in his underwear. If his hair tie comes down, you're just like, oh shit.
Oh shit. It's such a badass episode, and it's so, like we were saying, it's another episode where it's just quiet.
And it's so simple. It's just like Jack runs into 3 archers
on a tower,
cursed on top of a tower, who are just like possessed by a curse and are just killing machines.
Yeah, and they can they basically attack any sound they hear. And Jack figures out a way, that's why he starts losing the clothes, is to make no sound and basically confuse these guys into not firing at him, and then work his way up to the tower. It's so great that, like, you slowly get to see his build up as he moves up to the tower, and then the fight at the tower is badass. Like, it's just like, you're like, oh shit. Like,
yeah, it's a great example as to how to execute like low scale conflict, because when it comes to fighting or just general conflict in general, it doesn't necessarily have to be like the highest of stakes. It doesn't have to be like world ending stakes.
This
in order
is
to
literally
be engaging.
Well, that's what's interesting is like a lot of fights with Jack and a lot of anime stuff in general, you'll have one character versus like 50 different characters, you know, like a ton of them. And I think Samurai Jack is sometimes really, really strong when it's not a shit ton of characters. It's him versus the 3 archers, or him versus Soul Collector, or it's like
Dimongo.
It's those one-on-one fights where you get to see Jack shine differently, and those are some of the best episodes.
Yeah, because when it comes to, say, like a bunch of beetle robots, it sort of just boils down mowing them down like a Warriors game or something.
Very cool. Very cool.
Which is not knocking that, but when he has to like change up his strategy for a particular opponent with a particular weakness, you see how that strategy plays through, and it's able to convey it all without any like ham-fisted exposition in your face. Like, you get all you need through the visuals.
It's wonderful, especially 3 archers. You get it's pretty much silent until the last second of Jack putting his sword through the portal and closing it, which makes the episode even more important. It's another episode where he loses a portal, you know, like he has it and another portal in his hand, and he lets it go for the sake of somebody else.
Yeah, the selfless decision.
You gotta give it up to Samurai Jack. He's definitely one of the best heroes around, you know, like if you had to name all like these, there's so many heroes in shows, and Samurai Jack's just one of the best because he does what's right, even if it doesn't means he can't do his mission, you know, like, and you're just like, damn, Jack, that's honorable as shit. Like,
just so endlessly affable and altruistic, and the only time you start to really get into strong character conflict is once you get to the Adult Swim season.
Yeah.
And they're actually able to explore that well.
Exactly. Which is Season 5. Whoo, baby. I love that shit.
But back to the first 4.
Back to the first season. You have Jack versus Mad Jack, where they
it's Jack versus the evil one.
Jack.
Nah.
And you kind of always knew this episode was gonna come.
Of
you have a
course.
shape-shifting villain.
Yeah.
You of course knew he was just gonna be like, oh, I made a Jack. Fight the Jack.
A new He-Man, an evil one called Faker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this episode is badass. Like, it's full of really good fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is so cool to see Jack versus basically himself.
And thankfully they more or less get it out of their system and they don't try to like make it a recurring thing after the fact.
The thing about the first season is it just shows that the show just never slows down. It starts off fantastic and it doesn't stop being fantastic. You know, like I really, there's no slowdown. Like, I mean, we've talked a lot about Clone Wars, me and you recently, and we talk about some of the dips in episodes, and it's just not here in Samurai Jack. It just keeps being like, oh, that was good. That was good.
You would just think by rule of averages alone that they would just
there'd be something.
They would trip somewhere.
And it still works. It still works constantly, and you're just like, Jesus Christ. Even with something as stupid as Jack vs. Evil Jack. You know, like, you're just like, no, that's dumb, and then they still somehow pull it off.
Yeah, it's all just like simple premises, it's almost the concept that maybe it's more storyboarding than actual physical scripting.
Yeah.
Because that is the thing with animation, especially when it's like sole creators like Miyazaki.
Yep.
For example, usually doesn't write a script for his movies. He just kind of draws and lets the story comes in. And you can kind of tell most of the way those films are structured. But it's just one of those things where I feel like you go into a writing room and they're just like, what do we want to tell? And they drop like one-word premises.
Yeah.
And they're just like, what if Jack met a crazy Scotsman on a bridge?
Yes.
How would that go? And they're just like, yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so the Jack and the Scotsman is, if not my favorite episode, definitely top 5. Like, it made me laugh out loud. It was great action. I am always a big fan of John DiMaggio.
Yep.
I love him. I anything he's in, I'm always just like, yep, cool. It's Bender. It's Jake the dog. You know, like it's like I love him. And he plays such a good Scotsman here. It is so good because he's so good at being like such traditionally annoying, like loud Scotsman, and it just works so well.
And a lot of the characters, when they're really trying to exhibit a certain culture in the show, are this fine balance between like stereotype versus archetype.
Yeah, like, oh yes, like,
and it never like steers too much to that other side. You know what I mean?
It's true. And the important thing about the Scotsman is he's truly the only other reoccurring character. Yeah, you have Samurai Jack, Aku, and then the next guy who's been in the most other episodes is the Scotsman.
It's kind of just his only friend, like in the future,
which is it's interesting, you know. Like, he's the only guy who can match him, you know, which
is so weird because it's just like you would think they go for something obvious like a samurai meets a ninja.
Like,
just like samurai and this like crazy Scotland Highlander
with a gun for a leg,
and a giant sword.
You're like, what? And to be fair, it just fits the show so well. Like, it just adds to this like zany energy. That's what I love about Samurai Jack is it walks this line of being like fine art and being zany comedy, you know, like, and it constantly rides that line, and it works so fucking well. You're just like, how does this keep working? You're just like, what the hell? I definitely love the Scotsman. And I think they use him extremely well too. Like, they bring him in a couple times, and I feel like it's perfect. You know, like,
and he definitely is a fan favorite. I remember like one of the first questions when the show was coming back
is when
like,
he come back.
Aside from like, we really hope Greg Baldwin's the one who voices Aku now because he also took over from Mako and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Was just like, Scotsman better be in this fucking season.
We'll
talk
about it. We'll talk about it.
But I did bring up a ninja, which I guess is as good as a segue as I'll get for the Samurai versus Ninja episode.
We're jumping that many seasons? That's season 4, bruh.
Yeah, I mean, we can dial it back if you want.
You know I don't give a fuck. I love that episode. And that's one of those episodes that I, at first, was not paying attention. I was, like, doing something else. Mm-hmm. And then I remember looking up and being like, oh, shit. Oh, man. Oh, man. One of the most beautiful episodes of animation ever. Like, it's just so well done.
It's just distilled simplicity. So Jack finds a ninja, and they have their conflicting ideologies because, you know, samurais versus like ninja mentality. And the fight is presented just solely in black and white, and the gimmick is that the ninja's in the shadows while Jack is in the light, and it's represented in black and white, and they're able to shift through the colors throughout the fight, and that's how the fight proceeds. Something you can only get away with in animation.
It only works there. It's just one of those moments. If it was a movie, I would say movie magic, where it couldn't be accomplished in any other medium, and it's happening there. You know, like, and they do. It's such a beautiful job. It's such a beautiful sequence. It's so well done. It's just the director just flexing on everybody because you could just tell it's like nobody else could make this happen and make this look smooth. And that's the thing. The episode is just smooth. Moves like butter. Like, just like, it's just so nice looking and like, I don't know. It was just enthralling. Like when I finally looked up and was watching I just watched the rest of the episode because I was like, "Whoa! Like this is crazy!" Like,
and it's one of those things where it's flashy, but not in the traditional sense of flashy that you often see other shows or movies try to execute.
Yeah,
where neither of them have like crazy superpowers or anything.
Nope.
The entire thing is just based on the background and like the setting and their environment.
Oh man,
and how the animation is able to work with that.
It's just so well done. It's so just like, holy shit. Like, you know, like it's just, it's the epitome of Samurai Jack. There's no dialogue. The visuals are beautiful. They're changing the frame and aspect ratio constantly. It's just, I'll say it again, the flexing on him. He's like, oh, you like all these things I'm doing on this show? Let me give you all those things to the umpth degree, you know, like, and that's what it is.
It's insane. I remember I used to follow a reviewer like on YouTube, and he talked about Samurai Jack because he went to film school, and he said, Samurai Jack taught me more about visual storytelling than 4 years of film school did.
It's true. It's like the aspect of show don't tell in filmmaking is so apparent in Samurai Jack. They just don't tell anything, so it's all show. Like, and it works, and it just shows even more that this man's a master, and it's the reason why that literally at the end of season 4 he went right into Clone Wars. You know, like that they were like, give this man Star Wars because. And they should give this guy anything he wants. I
still need to watch Primal.
Yes,
that looks really good.
I do need to watch Primal. I would love to watch that. It just seems a very adult Samurai Jack. You know, even further than Samurai Jack season 5. You know, like you're like, oh shit.
Where instead of like transitioning to Adult Swim, it was birthed
there. So it could be adult the whole time.
What are other episodes you want to bring up?
So season 1, you have I mean, you have some ridiculous ones. You got Jack learns to jump good.
That episode is funny.
And that's the first episode of season 2 where you're like, wait, hold on. Is this going to be how season 2 is? Just like really kid based. But that episode is also very funny and kind of it's compelling. Like, you know, in a stupid way. It's like, it's got a good story behind it, you know, like, and you're like, huh. Season 2 also sees the Scotsman return, And then you have the Lone Wolf and Cub episode of Jack Remembers the Past. And Jack Remembers the Past is so good. It's so nice to get a little background on Jack more than that first episode, you know? Like, you're like, okay, good. Like, he's got more stories to tell here. Because it's a kid's show, so you're kind of like, it's nice that we have adult Jack, but obviously little Jack was doing some cool things, and it's kind of like...
Yeah, there's something to be said about his origin because we breeze over, like, his training in a montage. Not even breeze over, because it just feels organic.
Yeah, it feels like
But the fact that they still leave that door open to flesh some of that stuff out.
Yeah, it's nice. It's like, it's kind of like the... in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where it's like, oh, you ever wondered how little Indy was? And you're like, well, here it is, you know, like, and I think that's a great little addition to the story. Now, super weird episode, but I feel like it's kind of a nod to, like, classic Dragon Ball and other episodes is Jack is naked. Like, it's just such a weird episode of, like, them playing around with Jack moving around and doing basically the Austin Powers joke of covering his penis constantly.
Yeah.
Like, but it's funny and it's lighthearted and like...
It's just such like an easy joke, but when you have like such talented creators and animators behind it, they're just like, how creative can we get with just this one gag and just execute it to the nth degree?
It's just wonderful. And then at season 2, I think the crown jewel of season 2 is it's Emmy award winning Jack and the Spartans. Jack, I said it earlier. It's epic.
It's just one big homage to Frank Miller's 300, and this was years before we got the Zack Snyder film.
Yeah, and what's fun about it is they still make it Samurai Jack. It's still futuristic Spartans. They do cool futuristic things. And somehow, the 300 doesn't even hold a candle to it. That episode is more badass. Like,
it's so odd.
It's so odd. Because, I mean, yeah, everyone likes the original 300. It's fun and badass and it has cool fights. But somehow, this episode is able to sum up that same fight in such a cool way.
Yeah, it's such an odd thing when something that's homaging something that's like
does it better,
actually succeeds and does it better. It's kind of like John Carpenter doing The Thing.
Yeah,
it's like that's one of his favorite movies. It's
and he
like,
did
I
it
still
way
love
better.
That movie. He's like, yeah, your movie's better.
You're way better.
better.
Way better. I would much rather watch John Carpenter's The Thing. Oh my goodness. I think that's one of the best episodes in the entire show, and it's just, I don't know, the robot minotaurs on tank treads, that's just badass.
That's all you need as a pitch.
Robot
minotaurs on tank treads. Where else are you gonna get that?
Nowhere on Cartoon Network, that's for sure. Like, other than that, and that's just such a good episode. And then we already brought up the season 3 opener of Chicken Jack.
Yeah.
Like, Chicken Jack is an episode that just shouldn't work. It just shouldn't. Like, it just shouldn't. And somehow,
he's a chicken. That's the joke.
And then somehow it turns into a badass, like, him fighting in the underground chicken fight rings.
How can we keep this up for 22 minutes?
It seriously is. It's so funny because it starts off at being like, okay, we're going to make some chicken jokes. And then they're like, but now we're going to go to the underground and it's going to be Jack fighting for his goddamn life as a chicken. And you're like, what? And then it's badass. It's awesome. Like, it's one of those things where you're just like, why is this working? Why is this working? You know, like, and it does.
And it plays to that mentality that never ever make any excuses that you can't tell compelling fiction within a 22-minute time frame.
Yeah, seriously, you're just like,
that's like this show in a nutshell.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. They basically perfect the 20 minutes, you know, like, and that's the real hard part of doing animation sometimes is fitting your big epic story in those 20 minutes.
Yeah,
you know?
and
like,
I get it. Like, it's something that I think I would struggle with if I had to, like, form to like a 22-minute format. I'm so used to like the 40 to 45 minute thing, maybe to 50 or an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
And it gives you a lot more room. But given the restraints, you often tend to be more creative that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you have to make it work in a one and done, especially with a show like this.
Yeah, especially. I think season 3 is somehow one of the strongest seasons. It's full of really good ones. Another one is Jack and the Traveling Creatures, where he rides all the different traveling creatures to get to the Guardian, and he fights the Guardian, who's voiced by...
sounds like Kevin Michael Richardson.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
So, such a good fight. And it's like, and it's sad to see Jack lose. Like, that's the best part of that episode is Jack just losing, like, because he usually wins, or pulls something out of his ass.
And it's not even a case like with the 3 blind archers where he had the choice to finally go back, but he decided to make the selfless decision.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, like, my exit, my way home is, like, right there, and the only obstacle in my way is you, and I can't beat you.
Yeah, it's wild. Oh, man. I thought that episode surprised me in a lot of ways, because I just didn't expect what was going on. I was like, okay, he's riding some creatures, and then the Guardian fight started, and I was like, Jesus, what? Like,
yeah, such, like, a cool design, too.
Yeah.
He's, like, this weird amalgamation where he's, like, this future hipster. He's got, like, the tinted sunglasses. Oh, you going all old school on me, huh? He pulls out a sword of his own.
Yeah, right. Love that. And season 3, I feel like he just starts playing with genres, because you have that, and then the next, pretty much the next episode is Jack and the Creature, which they're just like, what if we did My Neighbor Totoro with Samurai Jack? And you're like, what? And they do it.
It almost seems like it's coming from a place of, like, real annoyance of My Neighbor Totoro.
Yeah, right?
Because they make the creatures so annoying,
Obnoxious.
and that's part of the fun. It's so obnoxious. It's almost like Tartakovsky was just like, I fucking hate that movie.
It's just a funny episode. Yeah. And then you have season 3 just is stacked. You have that haunted house episode. We said it earlier.
That haunted episode is frightening. It's so good.
That episode, it's emulating the classic horror mangas when they're trying to tell us, a horror story.
It's that specific, like, Japanese flavor of horror.
And of Ghost Story.
Yeah.
Of Ghost Story specifically. And it works so well. There's so many bad horror movies out there. It was so surprising to see Samurai Jack just be like, you want to see a horror thing? And then flex, and there it was.
Yeah, just the simple of just like he finds the house, he meets the family, something's off about them, they're paranoid, they don't want to talk about certain things, and that whole section where they almost like have a seizure.
Yeah,
and they like seize up.
It's horrifying.
And like the spirit just like awakens, and then it shifts to like black and white, and it's like scribbly and rough.
I love the scribbly and rough effects they keep doing. That like he keeps seeing those like visions. I'm like, I love that. Loved it. It's definitely it was one of those episodes that like it's just surprising. And I think that's the same thing you gotta say about Samurai Jack is even if you went in being like Samurai Jack's a great show, it was constantly surprising me with how good it could be. And was. And standing the test of time, that you could watch any of these episodes now and be like, yep, that is a beautiful episode, like that is gorgeous, I
mean, even just the simple accomplishment alone of it being a traditionally animated series up until season 4.
Yeah.
And the fact that like part of the style choice is that characters don't have outlines.
Yeah. Just
that alone, just like, that's not easy.
No, that's not. And then I think, would you call The Birth of Evil your favorite episode of this?
I love The Birth of Evil.
Yeah.
Because that's real, like, heavy lore stuff.
It really does. It feels like
it
from the beginning, too. They're like, and then this black thing was birthed and the gods came up to beat it.
Yeah, it was just like the essence of evil was born into the universe, and like... It's like, it's 3 gods. It's Odin, it's Anubis, and it's another
Ra.
one.
Oh, Anubis and...
No, it's not. It's Ra.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Ra, it's Odin, and I forget the third one. It's the one with like the multiple arms.
Is it Shiva or...
I think it might be Shiva.
I could be wrong. I'm sorry.
But I mean. And just the idea that, like, it was, like, the essence of evil that they tried to destroy, and they almost did, but, like, a piece of it
got away to Earth.
Moved to Earth. It just became, like, this haunted forest that would, like, dissolve and consume people. And it was, like, this cursed forest for years.
Fucking crazy.
Until Jack's dad decided to, like, dispel it with, like, magic, but accidentally put his own essence into it and gave it sentience as a Pooh. You're just like... This is deep, high fantasy shit.
Yeah,
and
you're like,
awesome.
holy shit. It's, again, another really surprising episode, because it goes hard. It goes hard. Like, it's just like, here, this is going to be a dark prequel story. Like, and it is. Jack's father gets kidnapped and then tortured for years.
Yeah, and the fun of it being a prequel in this sense is not only does it make the world feel more alive and bigger than it ever had at that point, but you also get the origin of the sword, how it actually is like this magical sword like created by the gods.
By the
it's such
gods.
a symbol just like katana.
Yeah.
And the idea is that even though you know where this is going to end up, because you end up at where the first episode started, it's an inherent tragedy because you know what's going to happen in the first episode.
And definitely, we haven't brought it up yet, Samurai Jack is sort of a Superman story. It's definitely his past or his home is destroyed and he's sent somewhere and he's the only of his kind and he saves people.
Yeah,
you know,
and
like travels around and he's righteous and
completely altruistic.
Yes, and it is just a Superman story with a sword. And to be fair, this outdoes most Superman stories by a long shot. And Birth of Evil is a great way of doing the Krypton prequel story and making it epic. Like, fuck. Like, does it make it epic? Like, you know, like...
I mean, just the shot alone of just, like, the gods, like, give him the sword and they give him his armor and he's, like, flying around on a Nimbus cloud. And just like, this is amazing.
This is
crazy. And then it turns out into, like, an all-out war.
Yeah. It's so good. It's so good. And I love... I love the amount of armor that everyone gets in the show. I think it's epic and badass. Like, it's so badass. And so that is the last, like you said, last traditionally animated episode. Season 4 is when they started to do a little bit of digital stuff. You said season 5 is all digital.
Yeah, Adult Swim was... because it had been so long, they animated it digitally, but what they tried to do was like emulate some of that old school techniques that they had done.
Of course.
Because it was like the exact same team as the original series.
Yeah.
So they're just like, we have modern techniques, but we're going into it with that old school philosophy.
The first episode of season 4 is Samurai Ninja. We already talked about that, but just like, it's just dope. It's just dope. Then, You have a really funny but annoying episode.
I know where you're going.
Is This Scotsman Saves Jack Part 1 and 2. It's such a funny episode because you get to hear Phil Lamar do like another Jack voice, you know, like, I don't know what you mean, dude. I'm not Samurai Jack. Like, it's so good. It's so funny. And it's more great Scotsman stuff of him just being pissed at Jack and be like,
so it's all like shenanigans, and then it gets serious when they actually confront like the three beings that had taken his memory.
Yeah,
and they're like these weird siren-like creatures that attack through music, and it's like diegetic too. It's really cool. And then once that's dealt with, the remainder of the episode is more shenanigans of them like competing with each other.
Yeah, right. You're like, oh. Okay. Like, and I love that second part because you're kind of like, it's so funny because you're like, oh, the episode's kind of over. He saved Jack's memory and everything. And then you're like, no, we're going to have some fun, you know, like, and it's just full of fun little competition stuff, you know, of them going head to head on things and just like, no, I have to row the boat. No, I will row the boat. Like, it's just a fucking funny episode. And then one of the most surprising episodes of season 4 and is the biggest I wouldn't say distraction. It's the only episode that doesn't have Jack as a main character is the Tale of X9. The Tale of X9 is a really interesting episode because it's basically a hard-boiled film noir.
Yeah, and it's also sort of like a heartbreaking shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Of just like, what if we have an entire episode about someone who's there to hunt Jack down?
Yeah.
He's like mowing down robots like it ain't no thing every episode. So what happens when we actually
look at a
focus
robot
on a character from their perspective?
Yeah, I love the change in perspective. I'm a huge film noir sucker. Anything film noir, I'm like, yes.
Except the original Blade Runner.
The original Blade Runner. Because, I mean, I get it. It's film noir.
We've talked about it before.
But
it's okay. You like 2049.
I like 2049. But X9, it leans into that really heavy, the film noir feel. And it just, it's so great. It, like, feels like Brink, you know, like where it's just like hard-boiled detective laying down hard-boiled, like you know, like dialogue and stuff like that. And you're right, it's cool to see Jack as this like unstoppable force that all these robots can't do shit about. Like,
and the fact that the ending's so stark too.
Yeah, and you know, it's one of the only times that Jack really feels bad for killing a creature, you know, building a robot.
It's one of those things where like every action has a consequence, even if it's for the right cause.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what Jack is doing is right, but his actions do affect people in the negative as well, even if they are altruistic.
Exactly. And that's what I love about that episode is it goes even film noir with its lesson, you know, like it's morally gray, and you're like, ooh, nice. I love that episode a lot, even though it seems so out of place, randomly, you know, like I absolutely love it. And then there's the final, quote unquote, final episode, the last thing, like what they were going to just leave the entire show on if we didn't have the 2017 revival, 17, I think, 17 revival. You have Jack and the baby, like, and I like this episode a lot, but it also, even though I knew there was going to be a season 5, it's like I almost feel sad for all the past fans, you know, like you, is that the show just stops, and you're like, that's a cool sentiment that Jack's adventures go on forever, like Star Trek. They're like, would they go on forever? They just explore the stars, and you're like, that's cool, good sentiment, but I would like an ending, please. You know, especially for a show that talks about its ending in the credits. I gotta get back to the past. It's in the fucking opening, you know,
even
like
the tease with the Guardian episode.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're not ready for this yet, and we get that like glimpse of like a version of a future Jack.
Yeah.
That's been in the future for years. And we sort of like explore that.
Yeah.
Even if it's not in the way we would have expected when we get to the Adult Swim season.
Can we talk about season 5 now? Like, I mean, Jack and the Baby's a really good episode, but
the only other episode I was going to bring up is like the seasonal one.
The seasonal one, yeah, that one's good.
Yeah, or like the scientist tries to kill him. It's that whole episode. Like, scientist is making like a potion to kill him. Then the next is like they're trying to make a weapon against him. It doesn't work.
Yeah,
it's like
it feels like the Batman the animated
like
series,
the haunted forest spirit.
Yeah,
Holiday Nights. Holiday Nights. Batman Adventures.
Yeah, it feels like that. And it also feels like the what's the episode where they're all sitting around playing poker and they
almost got him.
It feels like that, where they're like they're all like almost got Jack stories, you know, like they're, because the story again. The story's about Jack there, but it's not from Jack's perspective ever for any of those stories, which is really fun. You know, like it gives you another look at what it seems to watch this unstoppable samurai march through these robots. So season 5, I was so excited for it because, of course, you know it's going to be epic. You know, like they're bringing it back and they're going to send it. You know, like. And I was so excited for it, and then I still had my mouth just to the floor for that first episode. The minute they were like, Jack doesn't have a sword, it's 50 years later, he's got a beard, and he's fucked. And you're like, what? Like, I was just, it was wild. I really did not expect, like, I knew they were going to go darker, but I didn't expect, like, this great depiction of loneliness. Because that's the great part about season 5 is my favorite episode. And I'm going to say that. End of
season 5.
Season 5 collectively is my favorite episode because in the same way that BoJack Horseman is fantastic for its depiction of depression and how normal people deal with it, Samurai Jack's a great depiction of loneliness. Like, and what it really means to be lonely, and especially because he's stuck out there in the future and nobody knows him, and he thinks he's truly alone, you know, like. And I love that episode where she goes around and learns all his deeds and everything, and like,
that's such an episode that would be an easy, just like remember the good old days of Samurai Jack. But what works about that episode is that it makes even the most like minuscule episodes feel like important because it shows like how many lives he's touched over
saved
the course of his journey.
I love season 5. I think at first I thought the animation in that first sequence, I was like, oh, the animation has changed a lot. Yeah. But it's only in those first couple sequences because second episode starts, and as much as the style has changed, or the animation has changed, the style stays the same. It looks like a Samurai Jack episode starting episode 2, you know, like, because at first I feel like he's trying to find that Samurai Jack style. He's like, oh, I sort of remember it, you know, like, and then second episode, they're like, yep, I remember it. And it's just like, you know, and it's really funny because it really feels like that once he's back in his gi and his normal outfit, is because you go from being like, that, like, no, you know, like, it's different now, he looks different, to being like, nope, this is the old model, and it looks different but looks good. You know, like, and that's what I love about this season is it looks different, but damn, does it look good. Like, I was also worried because I thought he didn't direct the final season. I thought that they might have brought in somebody else. No,
he was still involved. Yeah,
and he was so heavily involved, and it just comes across. Like I said before, there's lots of really artistic and well done episodes of Samurai Jack, and I feel like season 5 is just more of that, and you're just like, holy shit.
It sort of like opens right off the bat with like them changing the opening to the 50 years of past monologue, and it already sets a tone of just like, wow, we're in some
dark shit here.
Yeah, there's just despair at this point.
Yeah, and I love how they deal with it. That Jack's like slightly dealing with PTSD because he's been fighting for 50 years.
And he lost his sword, and he's just like, there's no point. All the time portals have been destroyed.
Yeah.
Including the one with the Guardian, because we get like a little wink to him later where you see his glasses on the ground.
Yeah.
So like Aku even got rid of that portal and killed the Guardian.
Like, Jesus.
So you're just like, there's no way for him to go home. What is he even doing? He's just doing it because that's what he's been doing.
Yeah, that's what he's been doing.
I wouldn't be surprised if Genndy was a big Berserk fan, because those first 3 episodes have some real Berserk vibes, especially like the shadowy, death-like figure on the horse, always in the distance chasing him.
I love that.
I was just like, that reminds me of Skull Knight from Berserk. Like, I remember exact silhouette shots of that, and Guts having like similar visions.
Yeah.
Like, with a campfire. I'm just like,
I love his bike. I almost was upset when they destroyed it a couple episodes in. I loved it. I love the new aesthetic of like, sure, before it was like classic samurai in a futuristic setting, and then the season 5 kicks off and they're like, nah, cyberpunk samurai full on, and you're like, all right, okay, and then he breaks out the guns and you're like, oh, okay. Like, you just start shooting the robots apart. I'm like, fuck yes. Like,
then he deals with Scaramouche and takes his like cool like tuning fork sword, which is pretty dope. Also, Scaramouche is a delight.
So ridiculous.
For like such a new recurring villain just for the final season.
I know.
He's so goddamn entertaining.
It's so funny because it's basically the same voice actor who originally did the samurai. Like, isn't it? Like,
no, it's definitely Jeff Bennett. It sounds just like Jeff Bennett. Scaramouche. He's doing like a sounds like a Sammy Davis like impression.
He is. It's such a ridiculous and they even bring in like season 5's great because they bring back everything. Every little thing comes back. Even I was saying the Soul Collector guy, they bring him back.
Yeah, Demongo for like a little wink.
He walks in and he's like, "Nah, fuck this," and leaves. Like he's like, "Nah," like. It's so
even the
great.
rave episode is referenced.
Yeah, right. Which you would think that they would be like, "No, we don't need to look at the rave episode." And they like do it again and again. You know, like, and that's what's so great about the show is that it seems so light on its lore at first. You know, like being like, "Oh yeah, we're just gonna tell another genre story." Then season 5 is like, "Yeah, but that was all part of this universe."
Yeah, it's one of those things where like everything mattered.
Yeah, which I love. I love that. Instead of being like, yeah, whatever, we're moving on. They're like, hey, this all works together. Like, even though it's a wacky, fucking crazy world.
On the topic of new characters, since we brought up Scaramouche, we should talk about Ashi.
Yeah, of course, for any character voiced by Tara Strong, I'm there.
You're probably in good hands.
Good hands. I love Tara Strong. I think one of the reasons why she works here is that Phil LaMarr is able to bring that intensity to Jack, that scream that he does, the Samurai Jack like like as he's attacking things, and Tara Strong as Ashi is great too because she can bring that scream too, you know, and sound angry instead of sounding like attacked, you know, like, you know, which is a hard line to go.
And even just the idea on paper of like a daughter of a coup who becomes an ally and then later a love interest to Jack on paper seems like, I feel about that, but then you're just like, no, I like it.
Yeah, exactly. I remember thinking like, is this a dumb idea? And then it was happening, and I was like, this is a cool idea. Like I was like, this is
the episode that ends with them panting, and then it hard cuts to them making out.
I know.
I died laughing. It was so great. And the fact that it had the insert song as well.
Right? You're just like, what? Like,
and then most of the next episode is just an entire innuendo, too.
Right? You're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not afraid, beyond just the gore, to be a little more risque with its jokes. Wow, what a freak. Looked like a talking penis.
I know! Looks like a talking penis. I was like, what did they just say?
That's literally when I watch that episode with my friends, it's just like, oh god, that dude's head looks like an actual dick. So the fact that Scaramouche is just
says
like,
it
look like a talking penis. I'm like, what?
So fucking funny. I was absolutely head over heels for season 5. If you've never gone back to watch season 5 of Samurai Jack, do yourself the favor and do it.
I did, leading up to us recording this, did watch like the first half of it last week.
Nice. It's just so well done, well animated. It's like you would think you would be like, oh, the quality's going to go down because we're switching to digital. Mm-hmm. Like it's going to be completely different. And then the quality's still there and the animation is gorgeous. And there's so many moments where you're like, oh, damn.
Also,
like animation-wise.
Talk about a trope that's so easy to do wrong is just the thing of just like me speaking to an outward version of myself. Or someone I once knew gets like so tired and it's so easy to be done like poorly where it really irritates me. It's like a pet peeve.
And they do it so well.
But the way like it's actually executed, where like it's just like a more paranoid Jack at first, and then he becomes like more and more monstrous over the course of the episodes.
Oh man, I love that. I love and that he talks to him afterward, like when he falls in love. He's the old Jack's like, "What are you going to do?" Like you know, like be careful. And I love that because he hasn't fully just like conquered the demons. You know, like they didn't just go away. They're just different. You know, like
so. Aside from the animation, the also big shift was Greg Baldwin voicing Aku.
Yes, which I think he does a great job.
He does. He's literally who everyone else wanted.
Yeah,
like Mako died during the production of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and he replaced him on that because he actually knew Mako as an actor and actually was like a protege for him.
Nice.
And so when that switch came over, they're just like, yeah, this is actually pretty seamless. This is a really good match. Yeah. So everyone said that if they ever brought Samurai Jack back, he's the one to get.
And he does a great job because it is basically seamless. It it's funny because it's different. But it's almost like Aku's different in season 5. Like, it's like, of course it's a different voice actor, but like Aku's acting different. He's done with the shit.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't want to deal with it. He feels like he'll never defeat Jack, so he just kind of gives up. And I love that. Like, this villain just being like, leave me alone. Like, I'm done. Jack's pissed me off. And Jack doesn't even know. He just thinks that, like, Aku's still out there about to kill him at some point. And, like, Aku's just like, nah, fuck that. I'm leaving Jack alone.
Yeah, and he doesn't even know that, like, he hasn't had his sword in so long.
It's so good. I love that. I love that Scaramouche is like, that's his main message. He's got no sword. He's got no sword. And then it blows up in his face.
Just the gag of him traveling so far to meet Aku, tell him the news, and then Jack actually did get his sword back, and Aku just destroys him.
And the final episode is so well done. It's tragic. It's well made.
I love the fact that they confirmed that the original Aku monologue in the opening for the first 4 seasons is propaganda.
Right? You're just like, oh,
because it makes sense because Aku's narrating.
Yeah, right? You're just like, I love that. And it's so great because, again, he gets to do the voice.
No, it's still the same opening. Okay. But the fact that he, like, comes in afterwards.
Yeah.
And it just it shows you all the more, like, how
close it is. Yeah, how close he is. And I think the final fight is extremely well done. I think that somehow, like you said, that could have been a really corny twist. Like, of course, Aku takes over Ashy's body.
Yeah.
And, like, of course that was going to happen. But when it does, it's still effective.
Her fucking design, too, when she goes, like, full Aku.
Right.
With, like, the lifeless white eyes.
I love it. And I think my favorite shot is when the Scotsman comes in and they're like, and he's like, I met somebody. And he's like, who? And he's like, her. And it's just this tentacle monster being like, and you're just like, oh, shit.
I don't think she's right for you.
So
because before that, he's just like, I want you to marry one of my daughters.
Please, take anyone.
Like the fact that he has like a million Valkyrie
different
warrior daughters.
So
and he's
funny.
an old man in a wheelchair, but he's still a badass.
It's so
and
fucking
then later
funny.
a ghost.
I was legitimately sad when they killed him.
I was worried.
I was worried.
I
was like, did you just kill the Scotsman? Like, what the fuck?
And then when he immediately came back as a ghost, I'm like, oh, okay.
It made me laugh because, like, of course he was gonna come back. Like, of course he was. And of course they just explained it with Celtic magic. Like, how is this happening? Celtic magic. Like, and you're just like, okay. Like,
so yeah, the final episode, like the final battle, is great. It's good that Ashy realizes, it's just like, oh, I have Aku's powers.
And immediately just teleports her back.
Let's go.
I know, it doesn't even take a second
and
for her to think of it.
Aku's just like, oh. It's like, oh no.
Oh no. Like, immediately. And it's such a good end fight. And then, because you always wanted, I always was worried that there was so many good Jack and Aku fights that the final fight would not feel significant.
Yeah.
And they do a great job at making it significant enough.
And there's something very satisfying about that's actually a point where Greg Baldwin got to like revoice an old scene.
Yeah.
Was the scene where Aku sends him forward.
Yeah.
Just like, you may have beaten me, but I will destroy you in the future.
In the future.
No future, Aku. Like, that was re-recorded.
Nice. Good.
And then the fact that, like, as soon as he's gone, he immediately comes back. You're back already?
And I think that's one of the great parts about this show is that Aku is such a serious villain, except he's so fucking goofy the whole time.
And I like that they don't also try to pad it out with like another fight now that he's back in the past.
Go.
You were already weakened like right before you sent me into the future. You are done now.
I love it because Aku's kind of a classic villain. He's a Dr. Claw. He's he's like the villain behind the scenes, always selling somebody to fuck somebody up. And it's so funny for him to be so damn goofy the whole time.
An episode that we didn't even bring up was Jack versus Aku.
I know, Jack versus Aku is fucking
just
great.
A whole episode of just like, why don't we just like settle this for real? But then it's just so funny that they're just like, but I knew that you knew that
I knew it, you knew.
So I put fake swords everywhere.
See, that episode cracked me up because that was the episode that I thought at the beginning of the episode this was going to be the worst Samurai Jack episode, because I was like, that's obviously a coup. This is such a dumb plot. How does Jack not realize that that's a coup? And then they start doing I knew what you knew. I knew it. I was like, oh, never mind. This episode's amazing.
But I love that it revels in sort of the inherent problem with a show like this that becomes repetitive, because they even address it. Like, they totally lampshade it. Just like, don't attack me. You know what'll happen. I'll turn into a bird. I'll fly away. And I'll say, I'll get you next time, Samurai. And then we won't see each other for about a week.
I love that episode. I love that episode for all the fourth wall breaking.
Like real tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
about
super tongue in cheek. I gotta say, this is one of those super enjoyable shows to watch.
But
and
as far as the final episode is concerned, I think a big point of contention, because people wanted their perfect happy ending, is the fact that Ashi dies.
Really? I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because it takes your stupid happy ending and goes, no.
There is no victory without consequence.
Yes, and it's one of those things where it was obvious that how could you do this time travel thing and kill a coup and Ashi still be alive?
No.
She's a daughter of a coup. Like, that's she would have never been made if he had not gone to power, you know, like.
And I love like these somber like last moments of him traveling alone, but then he gets like the ladybug, which has been a motif and a symbol throughout the entire final season. Of just like, oh, Ashi's spirit lives on, and you get that beautiful final shot with him with the pink tree, and as the sun is like rising, because it's just like, it's over, the journey's over, there's a bright future for everyone.
Oh man, I love it, because it's like, even though Jack saves everybody and does the right things, he still doesn't get it.
He still doesn't get everything, but he's also sort of content by the end of it, and he understands that she'll live on somewhere in some form probably, and the fact that like the journey's over and he's can at last be at peace,
and he put the world at peace, you know, like saved it from a great evil.
It's like, I got into like shouting matches. I'm exaggerating, but like when people were just like, I wasn't crazy about that ending, I'm like, no, that ending is fantastic.
Yeah, the ending's fantastic. The ending's fantastic. I love it.
You realize how hard it is for a show like that to stick its landing and it to do it so well?
Exactly. I think that's mainly it, is that the show, the whole time, you're like, how do you end this? How do you end this? And that's why I thought that they took it's obvious the way to just keep it going at season 4, just by being like, the adventure continues, by being like, because then you don't have to stick the landing. But that's what's so great about season 5, is it's all landing and it works. Like, and I'm just blown away, because it just shouldn't. Like, you know, a lot of shows blow up at the end, do not stick a landing, have a wishy-washy last episode. Not here. Nope. Every episode's great. I love it. I'm a huge fan of pretty much the entirety of the show. Like, it was just astounding.
Yeah,
I was really blown away by it, and it just makes me love Phil Lamar even more than I already did. I already love Phil Lamar.
I mean, throw a rock and you'll go into a great Phil Lamar role.
Right? It's true. That's the thing. Is Phil Lamar's in everything, and that's why it's so great to see him have his own full show, you know, like,
where he's the main character
and gets to play around, because there's a lot of characters that are voiced by Phil Lamar but are not Samurai Jack, which is really fucking funny.
Or it's like a show that doesn't have like the same punch that Samurai Jack does, because he had like Static Shock, because he did voice Static in that. But not a fan.
I don't like it.
But I'm not a fan.
We don't talk about Static
Even though he
Shock
has like
here.
other great characters where he's not the main character, but he's part of the main cast. Like everyone loves him as Jon Stewart.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing, is he's great everywhere.
The DCAU version of Jon Stewart is what reinvented Jon Stewart.
Seriously. And I think the other important thing to point out about this show, and it's one of the more masterful strokes in the show, is that we never really know Samurai Jack's name. Yep. It's all a terrible joke from the beginning, where they're just like, "What are you doing, Jack?" And they're talking in terrible New York accents to Jack.
Yeah, it's some like weird future slang, and it's just like, they call me Jack.
Jack. And I don't know why I love that. Like, you know, like, because they could have ended the series with being like his mom and dad getting him ready for his wedding and saying his real name, and they don't. And I like the integrity of that, you know?
Yeah,
like
it's really cool and like archetypal.
Yeah.
It's even something like the Scotsman never has like a name.
no,
He's just the Scotsman.
The Scotsman. Even his daughters are just like, Father! Like,
Yeah.
you know, like they never actually call him by his name ever, you know? Like, and I just love that. It's like the iconography of it all is pretty wonderful. Like, it just adds more to the wandering warriorness of him, you know, like that he doesn't even have a real name. He's just the blade, baby. Like, you know, just the samurai. Like, and I just love this show, and I can't recommend it enough to anybody who hasn't seen it all.
It's an actual masterpiece.
Yeah, seriously, and that's the best way to put it. Is that it's a masterclass in how to do kids action. It's also a masterclass in storytelling and art technique. Like, and it just and it's just masterful. Like, in a lot of ways, it just shows how great it could be constantly, and it is. Like, it's just like, damn, son. Like,
And it's good to have it finally like actually end.
yeah, exactly.
Because I mean, the announcement from Adult Swim like hit like a truck.
yeah,
It was just one of those things where like they hinted at it. I think like on Twitter or something.
yeah.
I think they did like a silhouette or something, and we're just like, is that fucking Samurai Jack? Because I think what they did was like the promotional poster of him like bleeding and bearded with the sword.
Yeah.
And we're just like, is that fucking Samurai Jack? And then once they announced it, just like Adult Swim is bringing Samurai Jack back for one final season. We're like, ah!
So good. I think that there's a lot of shows that get brought back on Cartoon Network, and sometimes that doesn't work. And
Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, Powerpuff Girls. The Clone Wars season is okay, but Disney Plus definitely sticks the landing a little bit more. But definitely, this is just a shining example for them, and will forever go down as one of the great kid shows. Like, it's just so good.
Yeah.
Like,
To the point where you don't even need to refer it with that like nomenclature. It could just be the best show, just one of the best animated shows.
One of the best animated shows. I'm pretty sure that's it all I have to say about Samurai Jack.
Yeah.
That's for you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please check out all our other episodes. And please talk to us about Samurai Jack on Twitter. I'm Yep Frank.
I'm Matakarika.
And we also have a Facebook page where you can talk to us. Please like, subscribe, do whatever you got to do on the many different podcast platforms we are on, because it helps us support the show, makes the show happen. So thank you guys, and please tune in next week.
See you next time.
Adios.